Okay, so I want you to picture a scene with me for a second. We're traveling back in time a bit here.
Setting the stage. I like it. Where are we going?
We are going to 1991, and the setting is this look of the year competition.
Oh, right. High stakes.
Very high stakes. This is high glamour modeling. We're talking big hair, big lights, the whole early 90s aesthetic. And sitting right there at the judges' table, looking very much the tycoon, is Donald Trump.
Right.
He's 45 years old at this point. Now, shift your gaze from the judges' table to the runway. The models that he is there to judge, some of them are as young as 14.
Wow. Yeah, it's a very visceral image, right? When you lay out the math like that.
The 45 versus 14.
Exactly. You have this massive age gap and this completely undeniable power dynamic. It sets a very specific, and I'd say very uncomfortable stage for everything we're about to discuss today.
It really does. And frankly, that specific detail, the 45-year-old judge versus the 14-year-old contestant, that is the hook. That's the entry point into a stack of material we have on the desk today that, well, it feels incredibly heavy.
It is heavy.
And I want to be clear right up front for you listening, we aren't just looking at like a scandal here. We are looking at a system of information flow. We're looking at what gets reported, what gets suppressed, and how we actually find out about it 8 years later.
That's the crux of it. To orient everyone, we are doing a deep dive into a report that was published today, February 25, 2026, by the satirist and commentator Andy Borowitz. The article is titled, "Video Reveals Trump's Sexual Misconduct with Children."
Yeah. And before we go any further into the weeds here, because this is a deep dive and we really want to be responsible with this, let's set some ground rules.
Good idea.
This topic is radioactive. It involves serious, very sensitive allegations. Both left-wing and right-wing spaces are going to have incredibly strong reactions to this.
Oh, absolutely. But our mission here isn't to play judge and jury. We're not endorsing a political side. We are here to act as objective observers of the source material provided.
Right.
We're unpacking a newly resurfaced report, the existence of a specific documentary that most Americans have literally never seen, and this clash between old-school broadcast gatekeepers and the modern internet. We are just here to report on what is in the documents and the video evidence that the source cites.
Exactly. So let's get into the what. The Borowitz article centers around what he calls newly resurfaced evidence. But here is the thing that confused me at first. This isn't actually new footage, is it?
No.
Like, this isn't something someone filmed on their iPhone last week.
No, not at all. And that's really the first major insight here. This is an archival deep dive. Borowitz is pointing us to a documentary produced by the BBC, specifically an episode of their flagship current affairs series, Panorama.
Okay, pause there for a second, because for you listening in America, you might know the BBC mostly for, I don't know, Doctor Who or The Great British Bake Off.
Right.
What exactly is Panorama? Is this like a tabloid, late-night gossip show?
That's a great question, because context is everything here. Panorama is definitely not a tabloid show. It is actually the world's longest-running current affairs television program.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Think 60 Minutes, but arguably with an even stiffer upper lip and incredibly rigorous editorial standards. If Panorama runs a story, especially in the UK where libel laws are incredibly strict.
Oh, yeah, they can sue for anything over there.
Exactly. It has gone through legal hell and back to get on air. They do not run things that they can't back up with solid evidence.
So this isn't a hasty blog post or some YouTube vlog.
Yeah.
This is serious institutional journalism.
Precisely. Now, this specific episode aired way back in 2018 in the United Kingdom, right before Trump visited the UK. And the title was incredibly direct. It was called "Trump is the President a Sex Pest?"
Man, the British really don't mince words, do they? That is just blunt.
They do not. But here is the critical piece of the puzzle. Despite being produced by the BBC, which is one of the most respected news organizations on the planet, Borowitz notes that this documentary was little seen in the USA.
Which brings us to the core tension of this entire deep dive. You have a major report from a major global ally aired in 2018. We are sitting here in 2026.
Right.
That is an 8-year lag. Why are we talking about this right now? What is actually in this documentary that Borowitz feels is so urgent to resurface today?
Well, if we look at the summary provided in the article, the scope is just, it's significant. The documentary didn't focus on one isolated incident, Panorama noted that over 20 women accused Trump of misconduct.
Over 20, that's a number that's really hard to wrap your head around. But to play devil's advocate, we've heard big numbers before in various news cycles. What makes the Panorama approach different? Why does Borowitz single this particular doc out?
The source makes a very important distinction about who these women are, because in political journalism, especially with high-profile figures, we often see anonymous sources.
Yeah. Source is close to the matter.
Exactly. Or a former associate. And those are very easy for critics to dismiss as hearsay, or just politically motivated leaks. But Borowitz emphasizes that these women were willing to go on the record, on camera.
That's a massive distinction. That is the difference between a rumor and a testimony.
It really is. The article notes that these were brave women describing encounters that happened when they were teenagers. And the source adds a pretty chilling thought here. He says, quote, "They had nothing to gain and everything to lose."
It completely changes how you receive the information as a viewer. When someone puts their actual face and name to a story like this, knowing the vitriol and the backlash that inevitably follows in our current culture.
Now, the backlash is guaranteed.
Right. You have to ask yourself, why would they do that unless they felt it was absolutely necessary? It's not something you just do for fun.
Precisely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the reason Borowitz is writing this today, in 2026, is that he sees a convergence. He's connecting this lost documentary to other files that have recently come to light, specifically the Epstein files.
Okay, let's double click on that. The Epstein files. We hear that phrase thrown around constantly on social media, often as sort of a catch-all for various conspiracy theories. But in this specific context, based purely on the source material we have, what are we actually talking about?
Good clarification. We're referring to the unsealed court documents from the Giuffre v. Maxwell defamation case. These are actual legal documents, depositions, flight logs, that kind of thing. Borowitz is making a specific linkage here. He states, quote, "The Epstein files are rife with allegations of Trump's sexual misconduct with children."
But he goes further than just general allegations, doesn't he? There's a procedural element in the article that really caught my eye, something involving the Department of Justice.
Yes. This is where it gets highly technical, but incredibly important. The article details a specific action, or maybe inaction is the better word, by the DOJ. It mentions a woman who claims she was sexually abused by Trump when she was just 13 years old.
13.
13. And the source alleges that the Department of Justice tried to contain the damage by reportedly withholding interviews with this specific accuser.
Contain the damage. That's such a loaded phrase in a legal context. It implies that the goal wasn't justice or discovery of truth, but management. Like reputation management.
That is absolutely the implication of the source material. So if you look at the two sides of this coin, on one side in the U.S. you have sealed files, withheld interviews, and a legal system that, according to this report, was working to keep things quiet. But then on the other side, across the Atlantic, you have this British documentary from 2018 featuring on-camera interviews.
So the argument Borowitz is making is that the BBC documentary isn't just a rehash of old news, it's corroborating evidence.
Exactly. It validates the files that were unsealed. He points to a specific witness featured in the documentary, Barbara Pilling.
Right, Barbara Pilling. I want to spend a moment on her story because it grounds all these abstract legal concepts in reality. She isn't just a statistic in a file.
No, she's a real person with a real story. She recounts meeting Trump in the 1980s. She was a teen model at the time. And this is where the timeline becomes so crucial for you listening to track.
Yeah.
We aren't talking about a single bad year. We're talking about a pattern alleged across decades.
Yeah.
You have Pilling in the 80s, The Look of the Year judging in 91, the documentary airing in 2018, and now this report in 2026.
It's like putting together a puzzle where all the pieces have been scattered across different continents and totally different decades. Borowitz is basically suggesting that the evidence has always been there, in fragments, but this BBC documentary pulled it together in a way that the U.S. audience was largely shielded from.
Shielded is definitely the right word. But here is where the source material takes a turn that I found even more disturbing. We've been talking about accusers up to this point. We've been talking about victims coming forward. But Borowitz argues that the most damning testimony doesn't actually come from the women.
No, it comes from the man himself.
Right. Borowitz argues that in some instances, Trump essentially testifies against himself.
This section of the article focuses on his time as a pageant owner. And I think culturally, we sometimes forget that he wasn't just a TV host or a real estate guy. He actually owned the Miss Universe and Miss Teen USA pageants.
He did. And according to the source, he didn't just own them as a typical business venture. He viewed that ownership as a license. Borowitz writes that he, quote, brags about how in the 1990s he used his position as a pageant owner to invade dressing rooms and ogle naked girls.
The phrase testifies against himself is so powerful there. Because think about it, if Barbara Pilling says it, a defense attorney can call it hearsay. They can attack her credibility on the stand.